Are you trying to make up your mind between the Simagic Alpha Mini and the Fanatec CSL DD? Fear not, because Racecraft Simulations has the answer for you, and we're going to tell you which one you should be buying right here, right now. G'day guys, Chris from Racecraft Simulations here, back again for another video. This is not a review video. This is a comparison. I'm not going to bother trying to review this bad boy, the Fanatec CSL DD, because it has been beaten to death by the internet already. So, if you're looking for a review of the Fanatec CSL DD, while we might cover many of the topics that are covered by reviewers, this is not a review. This is a comparison on whether you should go and put your hard-earned money into a Simagic Alpha Mini unit or a Fanatec CSL DD. Let's start off with the basics. By the base themselves, not counting the wheels, they come in around about the same price. We're talking approximately 1,000 Australian dollars for the CSL DT, not including the mounting hardware as seen here, and 1,050 at the moment on simrigs.com for the Simagic Alpha Mini. Add in wheels and the likes, depending on which way wheels you're going to go for. You can go anywhere between $1,600 and $1,900 in the Fanatec way, and you're about the same for about $1,650 to $1,900 for Simagic as bundles with the various options of wheel, the GT1D, GT1R, or even the GT4C, obviously the most expensive of the lot. We tested these units with the McLaren wheel to compare directly against the Simagic on my home formula rig, so I was giving you a direct comparison withoout having a different sized wheel, making the effect and the total feel of the wheelbase any different. They are the same diameter, although they do look a lot different. They're still both 300mm diameter. Moving on to the basic specs, of course, the CSL DD comes in at 5 Nm of total peak torque, unless you go pay for the Bost Kit 180, which comes in at $1,000 as we mentioned already. So we are reviewing this and giving you the example of this one with the Bost Kit 180 already purchased as the bundle for 1,000 Australian dollars, and that gives this 8 Nm of torque. The Alpha Mini comes in at 10 Nm of torque, so you still get more torque with the Simagic unit. As far as compatibility, the CSL DD is usable on both PC and Xbox. There's no support for PlayStation devices, whereas the Alpha Mini is direct to PC only. As far as connectivity, they both require a power pack, which comes supplied anyway. Connectivity to the PC for the CSL DD has a simple USB-C plug on the back. It's just the same as a phone plug. In fact, I even tested it with a phone plug and works just fine. As far as connectivity for the Simagic Alpha Mini, it comes with its own USB-B cable that you plug in there, straight into a USB-A cable, the same as you have with the Fanatec, to plug into your PC, and away you go. It's really simple, nice and easy, and we did try and do our best to keep things as even as possible to draw direct comparisons between both units. Of course, I've spent a lot of time with the Simagic Alpha Mini already on my home rig, and so it was as easy as taking that off, bolting in the Fanatec CSL DD with the McLaren GT3 wheel, which I believe is now discontinued, and we made sure to use the aluminium quick release, so we were testing with comparable equipment, as Simagic does have that aluminium D1 quick release. As far as other equipment used, we did have to go ahead and use the Simcore wheel mount that's made for the Fanatec CSL DD. I think this retails at about $197. You can mount it other ways, however. Of course, you can use the T-nut slots on the sides, which is what the Simcore uses, or there is T-nut slots in the bottom that you can use to flat mount to your rig. A downside here is that you cannot front mount it. So if you have an existing front mount simulator setup and you're not willing to change that, then you might be limited. However, there's a lot of people already making front mount replica kinds of mounts, which bolt into the side here, the same as this Simcore does. It uses this same bracket, and the extrusion comes in and bolts up to that and gives you this same angle adjustability as a Simcore. In fact, Simcore already have one done for that. It's just not a dedicated front mount across the front face, because you'd get in the way of this beautiful button here, and the fact that the front and the back of the CSL DD are plastic. As opposed to the Simagic Alpha Mini, on the Alpha Mini you have bottom mounts, side mounts, and front mounting. So you have all options available to you to be able to mount it up to your rig. In finished dimensions though, they do come out quite similar, and I'll quickly just see if I can bolt that one up, and I'm pretty sure that's born connected on me. And this one's the fun one, because the Fanatec QR is a bit fiddly, but in their finished dimensions they are actually quite similar in overall footprint. I'll just try and lay them out on the bench, and as you can see there, from the wheel to the front face is very similar between both of them, even with the very different styles of mounting them. And of course the Simagic hangs out a little bit at the back because it is a longer body. The Fanatec is taller, it is wider, it is lighter than the Simagic because this thing is a heavy boy. Moving on, as far as the installation and usability goes, I put this onto my home rig. I was using a front mount bracket that Johnny had supplied me when I got the Simagic Alpha Mini. Off goes the McLaren. And I had to take that off and go to the old crossbar extrusion that I had previously when I was using a Fanatec Club Sport CSW 2.5. That was really easy though, a simple crossbar onto my rig, and I used the Simcore mount to drop it on, a couple of nuts and bolts, and my total wheel position actually ended up being pretty much the same. If not, it was a tiny bit higher than where I had it with the Simagic, but I wasn't going to sit there and try and chase wheel position all day long. As far as installation and getting it set up on my rig, it was really easy. Just a simple matter of going to the Fanatec website, downloading the right drivers that you needed, and downloading the Fanatec software and downloading the CSL DD control panel. That's all you needed to get going, and I was up and running within iRacing in a matter of minutes. It already came with the latest firmware and drivers already installed. I didn't worry about going and chasing all the latest firmware and looking into whether I needed to set things up. A simple plug and play, press the button, I set my center, I went into iRacing and configured my settings, and I was out on track. I followed the same procedure for setting the overall force feedback as I did with the Simagic, and I explained that with the Simagic Alpha Mini video review that we did a little while back here at Racecraft Simulations, so you can go check that out if you're a little bit unsure how to set up your force feedback using iRacing. As far as Fanatec settings, I went onto the Fanatec website and I went to their recommended starting settings for the CSL DD, plugged them straight into the Fanatec setup, and went away with setting that up. I did find I turned the total force feedback down to a factor of which I was using for the Simagic. So the Simagic is 10 Newton meters, and I was running that at 65% force feedback, so 6.5 Newton meters of total torque. So I matched the same by the math for the Fanatec CSL DD, which I think works out to 75%, knowing that the torque should be relatively the same, and that's what I'm really looking at. I'm looking for the torque and the total feel of the wheel. But initial setup was good. It's just as easy for both of them, and I didn't really find any major issues with the initial setup for the Fanatec as compared to what I had with the Simagic. So it's a good sign. Getting out on track and getting a feel for things straight away, I immediately noticed that the torque felt very similar, although the total amount of holding torque while going through a corner, especially with things like downforce cars where you've got those long sweeping corners, I did find that the torque seemed to drop off through the middle of the longer corners with the Fanatec unit. And to get the same feel, I needed to turn up my peak torque to around about 80 to 85% if I'd already started at 75. So I needed to use more of the torque available from the wheelbase to get that same kind of feel through the middle of the corner, that the car's really tucked in and hanging on for dear life that I was used to having from the Simagic unit. And that was just a little stickler for me, knowing that I had to turn the torque right up to get the same feel out of a wheelbase that's already limited on torque. 8 Newton meters with the Bost Kit 180, that is the maximum you're going to get out of this bad boy. If you need a lot of torque, you might be in a bit of trouble with here. But that's the intention of this wheelbase. It's not intended to be the silver bullet for every sim racer on the planet. It's intended to be a great entry level to getting going with a direct drive wheel at an affordable price, just as the Simagic Alpha Mini as well. This is the smaller brother to the bigger Simagic Alpha that comes in at 15 Newton meters, and of course you can go crazy with Fanatec DD units or even Simucubes that go all the way up to 25 Newton meters, or you can build your own OSW and go absolutely crazy if you want to be like Hulk Arms. Getting on to more driving action, I tested it with the 3 main car combinations that I most commonly use in iRacing and that I've been using since I installed the Simagic Alpha Mini. So the 3 combinations were as simple as the Formula 3 at Road Atlanta, because I've done 1,000 of laps around Road Atlanta with the Formula 3. I used the 360 Sprint car at Bristol for a good feel on how the car handled bumps and very fine adjustments in the steering ability through the corner. And I tested it also with the Porsche 992 Cup car, the recent Porsche 992 Cup car in iRacing around Chicago street circuit. A great test for how your wheelbase and how your setup and how your driving is handling an undulating racetrack while on the brakes and trying not to fire it into the wall, because there's a lot of them around Chicago. So on the initial test, going with the Fanatec, everything feels good, and the only real gripe that I had was the fact that I needed to turn the total torque up in the Fanatec settings to get that same feel through the long corners as compared to the Simagic Alpha Mini. As far as adjustability goes, however, I do feel like you do have limited adjustability with the Fanatec software and with Fanatec's platform and ecosystem as compared to what you have with the Simagic. And let me explain. In Fanatec, there's no settings for interpolation or filtering or suspension feel. There's purely settings for force effect intensity, total force, and other small things that you can tune and adjust depending on your preference. So without going crazy and using the likes of what a lot of people use in iRacing and using IRFFB and other third-party programs to get more feeling from my force feedback, I felt like I was quite limited in what I could achieve with the Fanatec, but I didn't really feel like I was missing a whole bunch either. So maybe having those tuning options doesn't really give you a whole bunch to play with anyway. However, the number of different settings and profiles that you can save within Fanatec is limited to just 5 different profiles per game type. So you can use Fanatec to recognize the game type that you're using, but you can only set 5 different presets. Now, for most people, 5 preset profiles should be enough. You think you have 1 preset profile for a sedan, 1 preset profile for an open wheeler, 1 for a prototype, 1 for a rallycross car, and 1 for sprint cars if you're one of the crazy people in iRacing that does do all of the different platforms available to you within the game, then you might get away with having 1 profile for each. But as opposed to the Simagic Alpha Manager software, where it's just a file directory and you can save an infinite number of combinations of wheel setups, suspension settings, filtering, different strengths, and all the likes that you want to have for your Simagic wheel, I felt like I was a little bit limited, but maybe that's just me. I do like to have a lot of options on the table. That was probably the biggest drawback for me, and the fact that you cannot front mount the CSL DD. I'm a big fan of front mount wheel setups because it keeps it nice and clean. You can push the wheel way back and run a big extender. If you have the extenders, that's another thing that neither of these can do right now, is have extenders on the steering axles to space the wheel further away. But it must be said, both of them are very, very similar. Time now for some conclusions. To wrap things up, if you've survived this long listening to my ramblings about how things felt between the two different wheelbases, I congratulate you. Thank you for staying with us. But to conclude, both wheels are fantastic for their price point. $1,000, not including mounting hardware and not including wheel, for the Fanatec CSL DD. That is for the Bost Kit 180 bundle. If you buy the 5 Newton meter and buy the Bost Kit 180 later, then it might cost you more in the long run. Versus $1,050 for the Simagic Alpha Mini. They both fulfill the needs of the majority, and both of them are going to give you a great racing feel no matter what sim you use and no matter what your preferences may be. However, if torque is a concern, and I talked about with this with the Simagic Alpha Mini, 10 Newton meters might not be as much as what some people like, then 8 Newton meters for the CSL DD may be a problem. And already I was semi-concerned with looking at driving some of the bigger and more heavy-duty cars if I wanted to have more overhead. And overhead is simply just how much torque you have left over from what you've set the wheel to use to be able to put more in. If you've got a really soft-feeling race car, then you don't have as much left in the CSL DD as compared to the Simagic Alpha Mini. I was running this thing up to 80-85% at some stages, so which means I've only got 1 Newton meter of overhead left after I've set things up with the Fanatec software, which otherwise I would have, 2 or 3 Newton meters with my Alpha Mini just by having that little bit extra torque built into the rig itself. If that's a concern, then you probably should look at elsewhere. But if 8 Newton meters and you are absolutely decided that that's going to be enough for you, then the CSL DD is probably going to be fine for you. If you're coming from a already existing rig that just uses table clamps, or if you're a desk racer, then the CSL DD is going to be right up your alley. Fanatec does offer a desk mount attachment that you can just clamp it onto your desk. If you don't have yourself a front mount rig or a heavy duty extrusion rig like what we offer here at Racecraft Simulations, then the CSL DD is going to be easier to mount and easier to use as compared to the Alpha Mini. The Alpha Mini already needs its own mounting hardware if you're going to use these side holes, or you can bottom mount it to a steel plate, or you can front mount it if you've got one of our heavy duty mild steel front mount steering plates that come fitted to our RKS series of rigs here at Racecraft. So if you are a desk racer, the CSL DD might be more for you. If you've got yourself a heavy duty built rig or Magic Alpha Mini, that's going to be right up your alley. If you are already in the Fanatec ecosystem and you've got their shifter and you've got their wheels, then staying within the Fanatec ecosystem kind of makes sense. So the CSL DD will once again be more suitable for you. But if you do have a mishmash of different products and Huisenfeld pedals and you've got a Jinx shifter and you want to use a different wheel again, then the Simagic is going to be fine. It's a straight USB plug and play, it uses its own standalone software, and it's nice and easy because you've already gotten used to using multiple different softwares to set up all your different products on your sim rig. So the Simagic is going to be just fine for you to use. If you want to get away from the Fanatec ecosystem, Simagic is going to be nice and easy for you. All you have to do is just navigate a little bit of Chinese if it's not your home language to get through the website. You can get the drivers and your home and host. To wrap up, both of them are really great. Decide for yourself, stick to your decision, own your decision, and help your mates make their decisions when they go to buy their equipment for their sim rigs in the near future as well. Stay tuned, we're bringing you more videos coming up soon. I've got a new Formula rig getting built at home at the moment that will be unveiling very soon. Now I've finished this video program and we can start to building the new rig. Plus on the new rig, I'll be fitting a brand new Frex shifter that we're going to try out and give you our review of the Frex H-pattern shifter from right here at Racekraft Simulations. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.